Professor Cornelli, sorry. And if you agree, we can perhaps take a couple of questions. Are there any questions? We can begin with questions to the first speaker, Professor Ursini. Please speak into the microphone. I'm sorry, but the questions need to be put into a microphone, otherwise the interpreters can't hear them. I'm sorry, we haven't heard the question, but we probably will hear the answer. Well, you put your finger on it. That's the most important aspect of all. You got it absolutely right. Yes, we're trying to check that out. I would say that the answer is yes for edible plants. But let me say more. Let me tell you more. And I'll give you this information. I'm happy to give you the information. We're working with some colleagues over at Scripsa, and they were looking for an anthocyanin for brain aging. And we looked at the molecule in strawberries. Now, little tiny forest strawberries are one thing. They have a hard time growing in the woods. And the big Californian strawberries are quite another thing. We're risking the loss of a huge amount of minor components. As regards wine, David Sinclair at Harvard had a lot to say about this, because Sinclair identified the molecule that's now become famous, resveratrol. For 15 years, they said all sorts of things about it. At the nanomolar level, he looked at sirtuin 1 that controls the DNA and the gene expression of gene survival. And the vine, we measured this in Italy 20 years ago. We took 20 years of a certain producer of wine, and we looked at the resveratrol at the highest levels, and they were the levels when the wine was worst. It was worst because there had been rain, there had been bad weather, parasites, etc. And the poor plant defended itself, and at the very end, what might have been nutritionally richer in protective mechanisms came from the tough years. So there you go. So if I have a plant that's had trouble surviving and that's been grown naturally, that's been one thing, versus when I have plants that have been encouraged to grow using artificial chemicals, anti-parasite substances and growth factors, etc. What I'm doing is eating something that could actually harm me. Conversely, if I eat something that was grown naturally, I could be eating something that would be good for me. Is that what you're saying? Well, it's never altogether that easy, but as far as what I've been telling you, yes, that's right. Because plants that have suffered and survived those difficulties, quote unquote, are plants that are better than those that are cared for too intensely. But there is a but. Theoretically and also practically, you've got something relating to environmental sensing. Prehistoric man cavemen appear to have learnt to sense from a plant that it's not doing well. They learnt to understand that a drought was about to arrive. So if the plant that's beginning to suffer tells humans, look, I won't be around much longer, and so get ready for tough times, that plant apparently sends signals that humans understand as a need for reserves. And this was interpreted as one of the mechanisms of plant sensing that can induce obesity. The plant says in 2 months' time there will be famine. Put on weight because you'll need it. And in evolutionary terms, we selected them to grow. If we continue eating that plant, things won't be good. So this is a very American attitude, if you will. But in a way, we're defending ourselves versus plants that haven't had to struggle to survive. So really, there is an element of truth to what you're saying, but there's the other side of the coin as well. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Professor Ursini? And then we'll go on to the questions to the next speaker. Microphone, please.